what's up, people? Welcome back to the Over and 8 Minutes podcast. This week, I'm joined by a proper gentleman, a true hero, and a guy that I've really enjoyed getting to know over the past couple of weeks. This is the 2021 NLR Super Twins winner and champion. Welcome, Roddy Taylor, onto the podcast. Roddy, how are you, sir?
Good evening, Sam. I'm very well. Loving life down here in sunny Hampshire. You'll be pleased to know it's 29 degrees down here. So a bit balmy this evening, but no, all good in my world. Thank you very much, Sam.
Good, I'm glad to hear. 29 degrees, that's folklore where you're from originally, is it not?
It is. I think I've been up and down to Scotland a few times recently, and yeah, every time I'm putting on another jumper. So between here and Edinburgh, it's always another jumper colder. And my mum was originally from Castletown between Thurso and Wick, and that's another jumper colder again. So as I said, it's just another world.
Exactly. Two different, same island, two very different worlds.
Very much so.
Exactly. Roddy, what's new? How's life getting on?
What's new? Nothing's new. I'm still running around in circles on motorbikes with a load of like-minded idiots. I did it many years ago. Took it quite seriously a few years ago. Won a few championships here and there and competed against some of the best people in the world. And yeah, pleased to say I beat a lot of them. Life took over. All sorts of things happened in life. And I decided that I had a gap of 28 years with not racing. Life, you never know what it throws at you. Found out I had throat cancer. Went in for a bit of surgery, a bit of radiotherapy. Lost a couple of stone.
You make it sound like that's the reason you went in there.
No, just to lose a couple of stone, you get back down to racing weight. It's a bit extreme. I could recommend other and easier ways of doing it, for sure. But no, I decided just to go back and have another crack at racing about 5 years ago. So been loving it ever since. But as I said, we'll touch on some of that later on, Sam.
No, exactly, correct. And I want to get back into the very start. But before that, we're going to go through to the usual quick fires, the fans' favourite. They all enjoy it. And right, Roddy, they're just easy. It's just first thing that comes into your head. They're all this or that, pretty much.
It's not easy, Sam. I've listened to some of your other podcasts, and I wish life was so black and white as just answering a yes or no. Oh, it's this or it's that. But come on then, throw them at me.
Throw them at you. Right, easy one to start. Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Quite right. That's the Hampshire running.
But it depends on what time of day it is, because if it's later in the afternoon, or I've got to sit down and talk to somebody for an hour or so and just make stuff up, and I'm needing a bit of a hit, yeah, for sure I'll be going for a very strong coffee. But I don't have any coffee at hand, but I do have some of the original iron brew that's still got lots and lots of sugar in it. So I'll top up my fluid levels on that for the moment. Thank you.
The original nectar. We'll have you singing by the end of the podcast.
Oh no, you don't want to do that. There's many things that I can do, but singing and dancing is definitely not one that's in my repertoire, I can assure you.
From everybody I know that sings and dances, they don't seem to have it either, so don't let that stop you. Right, second one. And talking of which, night out or a night in?
Night in at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Nice and casual. I quite like that. Right, if you had to get rid of one tomorrow, would you rather get rid of motorbike racing or dogs?
Oh, now I need to check to see whether my wife's within earshot. We both like a dog. We've both always had dogs in the past, but currently with where we're living, what I'm doing, it's not black and white. So I would never ever get rid of motorbike racing. So at the moment, I'm afraid the dogs would have to go.
Well, that's very fair if you've not got them in the house beside you. Right. Oh, what's next? Here we go. Movies or TV series?
I like both, but at the moment I do like a good TV series, because with lockdown and various other things where all of a sudden they've cancelled some bike racing and I'm looking for something to go and do, yeah, a good binge watch of a good TV series is always great.
Exactly, a TV series. Just it's nice having that next episode and you don't have to think about what to watch next.
It is, yes, yeah, no, it's great, and I can fast forward the adverts and all that type of stuff in it. So no, it's good.
Exactly. Right, a torrential rainy track or a sunny day at the track?
Oh, Now, again, at the moment this year, torrential rain. I seem to have managed to pull off some better results in the rain. One of my competitors said to me quite recently, "Oh, Roddy, you're a bit of a wet weather expert." And I turned around and I said, "Jesus Christ," I said, "have you not seen the weather that we've had this year?" I said, "Do you not think I've had a choice?" So,
That's just, you just say it's where you grew up from.
it is absolutely running around the roads in the middle of the Scottish borders. As my granddad would say, he says, "Now, son, if you didn't like the weather, wait 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. Right. Whoa. Are you in the car when you're on the way to the meets? Are you a radio or a playlist man?
Playlist.
Strong.
Playlist.
Bath or a shower if you're looking to relax and unwind after a busy day at the track?
Oh, bath, without a doubt.
Are we talking bath bombs and all the suds, or are we just talking good old-fashioned boiling tub of water?
Talking just a lot of very hot water and ice cold beer.
Don't, you've convinced me. I might have to go for one after this if you keep talking like that. Like, if you're trying to get something organised, are you more likely to FaceTime somebody or call them or give them a text?
I would call them. Can't beat a good conversation, and text has no tone. And
text.
Yeah, and I hate it if my sarcasm's wasted. So
I suffer the exact same problem. I send a text, I read it back, and I go, I sound like an arsehole. I send them a text apologising for my text.
That's right. Yeah. No, I like to know that if they think that I'm telling them they're an arsehole, they know that for sure. So.
Right, a bourbon or a custard cream to go with your cup of tea / coffee?
Custard cream, without a doubt.
Right. Socks and sliders, yes or no? Socks and not flip flops, but sandals.
It's wrong. No, just no socks.
Nobody turning up to the pit lane wearing that.
No. I've seen some pictures of Lewis Hamilton and various other people recently who are apparently setting a fashion trend. So that's what it says anyway on Twitter and the likes. But I just look at it and I go, dear God. There was a picture of James Hunt and Barry Sheen and people like that, and then some of the today's up and coming stars and established people. And I think, oh no. So definitely no white socks and sliders. That's a no.
I'll see you in the Louis Vuitton or the Gucci headbands anytime soon.
No, you won't be. No. I won't be wearing my wraparound sunglasses and my designer Red Bull cap and wearing it backwards or whatever. No, that's not me.
Not you. Not yet. Not until they give you the money and tell you to wear it like that, and then you'll do.
Well, that's right. As he said, I'm still waiting on the MotoGP deal to turn up, but at age 58 and a bit now, I think it's a wee bit unlikely. But we can all dream. It's good to dream.
58 and a bit. Hey, you're sat there, one of the most recent champions in the world of motorbike racing. So.
Well, Valentino Rossi and I are both eligible for the Thundersport Senior 500 series now. So, yeah, you never know. As I said, Rossi's just retiring from it, so maybe he might pop up in the CB 500 class one day as a senior.
Exactly. I was about to say the same thing. You never know. Might end up in a teammate in an endurance race or something like that.
That would be good. Yeah, no, without a doubt. I have to work hard on the fitness. As I said, at my age, I'm competing against young kids, and it's not a series that's designed for elderly classic gentlemen riding classic bikes. It's modern, it's current, and I'm racing up against young kids. So, the fitness I've got to work hard on.
Well, you're doing all right, and with that Iron Brew, you'll be fine. So
yes, that's right. Yeah.
Iron Brew and Tunnocks tea cakes, you'll be there for.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right, a second to last one. What's your go-to musical?
Musical. Oh, good question. I can't answer that one because it just depends on the mood, where I am, what I'm doing, all manner of things. As I said, it's just music's too difficult. I think when I was talking to you the other day, we were on about it and saying many moons ago I did a thing on Radio Borders for like Desert Island Discs, and had to choose some songs that I would take with me. And honestly, that is so difficult. I think on my playlist on my iPod or phone now I think I've probably got over 2,000 songs on it. And it ranges from AC/DC to Glenn Campbell to, as he said, Genesis to Pink Floyd to Springsteen to Pavarotti to you name it, it's in there. It's very wide, very varied. If I've got the headphones on and I'm trying to psych myself up before I race a little bit, as he said, get a bit of AC/DC or Iron Maiden or something like that on there and get a bit pumped. And other times, as he said, on a long drive home, yeah, you just want something a bit more chilled. So I have no go-to default think, I'm going to go and listen to this or I want to watch whatever. No. So it's too varied.
Well, the playlist, just from the names you mentioned, I think you'll be doing fine anyway. So you don't really have to pick a specific favourite there.
No.
Exactly. And last one, the age-old question: sweet or salted popcorn at the movies?
Salted.
Oh, you're a braver man than me. Were you brought up on the salt on the porridge as well in the morning?
Absolutely. Again, one of grandfather Sutherland's favourites was the salt on the porridge in the morning. My brother and I used to call it the grey death because it was sitting there on the Rayburn that we had in the kitchen, and it would be bubbling away and bubbling and spitting and doing whatever, and we just used to look at it and just pull faces. But he would be there shoveling it in first thing in the morning. But he lived well until his 90s and was out and always doing something, never sat still. So, as I said, Grandad Sutherland was originally from Castletown up there in the very north of Scotland, so made a hardy stuff.
I was about to say the exact same words, made a hardy stuff. There must be something to it. My granddad was a salt on the porridge man, and he was in the garden. He had this massive garden, and he was out there cutting back the hedges every single day. So
yeah,
must be some truth to it.
There's a lot to be said for porridge, though. I mean, sometimes I will still do that, as I said, but I've gone soft. I will confess publicly to this. As I said, there's nothing better than like a big spoon of jam or something in the middle of it.
Sugar, drown it in sugar.
No, definitely better.
It's like toast. Porridge is just a vessel for sugar, and toast is just a vessel for butter.
Absolutely, yeah, with butter with lots of marmalade on it and.
Exactly.
See, I'm very much a traditionalist and all of that kind of stuff. As I said, I'm not fussy about what I eat. I think on about food, health, fitness. I wouldn't say I'm a vegetarian. I'll eat as much vegan stuff as I can. If I turn up at somebody's house and they've made me stew and dumplings, I will eat it. But if I can avoid it, I will avoid it. And I would say from a sports nutritional point of view, lasting the events that I've been racing in, they're endurance events. You've got to turn up there on a Thursday night, do practice on Friday, time qualifying, races, heats on a Saturday, and then you've got to peak at 3:00 on a Sunday afternoon. So you've got to mind what you're eating. You've got to make sure that you keep a constant supply of energy on fuel going in. And keep the levels constant. So avoid the sugary drinks and all of that type of stuff. And as I said, food like porridge and lots of veggie stuff and things I've seen been much better on. I think going back to when I raced in the 80s, and I was competing at a much higher level, as I said, with world-class people, but my fitness, my nutrition and everything was shocking. Classic case of I wish I knew then what I know now, and listening to some people. And what I've learned with dealing with young kids coming through go-karts, moving into slicks and wings cars, their parents have had unbelievable disposable incomes available to look after little Johnny, making the transition, as he said, from go-karts into cars. And they've had sports psychologists, they've had, as I said, their own chefs turning up, they've had all sorts of things. And I've watched with interest as to how, what is now Formula 1, Formula 2, or Formula 3, how the people in those paddocks now turn up prepared to race. And I think the bike world is still 10 to 15 years behind that. I think the bike, even the guys in the Grand Prix and the British Superbike teams, they're getting there with it, but they're not at the level that some of the Formula car guys are.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's almost I think the Formula, like you say, 1, 2, and 3, they're almost a completely different sport on their own now. Like there's such a difference between everything.
I think the amount of money that's involved, and just to put some figures to it, so the listeners get a feel for the amount of money that these people are throwing at things. People now coming out of the go-kart world, so you're 14, 15-year-old kids moving into Formula 4.
Yeah.
For one day's testing at Donington or Silverstone or wherever it is the team decides to go, they're probably spending approximately £5,000 a day just to run roundabout and do a day's testing in a car. And that's before they pay their sports psychologist to go with them and various other things that they've done. They'll have had a couple of days on a sim somewhere, iZone, places like that, in preparation for the test. And these kids, they've got to turn up, put their backside in the seat of a car, and they've got to perform from lap one. And you'll understand this from the sports psychology side of it. And sounds a bit pervy, but every single time they go out in the car, they've got to be at the same state of arousal. So it doesn't matter whether they're doing a test, whether it's qualifying, whether it's the first lap of the race, or just a lap on a Wednesday afternoon to test the car. Unless they're all at a constant level, you're either pushing too hard, you're not pushing hard enough. So the cars, the margins within it is so small. So the driver has got to make sure that he is very, very consistent. And the good ones turn up, get in a car, and can knock lap after lap after lap out without even thinking about it. So they'll have sat there in the chair, they'll have been doing visualization, they'll have been doing all sorts of things to make sure that they're properly prepared for it. And that's the level that these guys are at.
All right, so you mean they just have to get in the car and be at that 99 percentile and just go?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Like the cliche of flicking the switch, they just have to be at that from
it is
14, from age 14.
Because there's no point in testing and running around unless you're pushing as hard as you're going in qualifying. Mm-hmm. All that you're doing is just reinforcing bad habits, and the car's not reacting, or the bike isn't reacting as well as it's going to do when it's under real race conditions. So you're fooling yourself, and you're just reinforcing bad habits. And it's not the ones that's going to make you go quick. So they say about you've got to be in the zone, and all the things that you do in your practice, you've just got to practice to be in the zone. And when you're in the zone, it all starts to happen just as second nature. And it's instinctive. You don't have to think about it because you've already rehearsed it in your mind 2 or 3 dozen times. The visualizations tricked you into thinking that. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you've driven down the motorway somewhere and you've kind of come to your senses and gone, oh, where am I? And you've forgotten the last 30 or 40 miles, but you've never had an accident, you've never had a near miss, and you've never had a problem because unwittingly you've been driving in the zone and you've been doing it at a subconscious level, and you're probably actually doing it a lot better than you would do when you're really thinking about it. So it doesn't matter what type of sport it is, that's the level that you're pushing to. So you're doing it instinctively and you've not even got to think about it.
Then you can afford to listen to the guy that's trying to talk to you while you're doing 200 miles per hour around the corner as well.
I am so glad. My wife's often said that to me. She says, oh, I need to get you an intercom. And I've just pulled a face and gone, right, really? I think, how on earth some of the car guys, and I've done it. Mm-hmm. I've worked there as an engineer for some of the Formula car teams. And this happened with a very, very well-known driver who's at the front end of Formula E now, but engineer comes on the radio to him. He says, you can brake a little harder or a bit later into turn 1. Mm-hmm. So the next lap round, the driver comes round and he actually misses the corner completely because the engineers told him that he can brake later in there. But he can't because of all the other things that the engineer doesn't know about. Yeah. And then it snowballs, and then he has to push harder at the next corner to try and make up the time. And by this time he's run wide and he's got his tyres dirty. And then he starts to get frustrated because he's thinking, oh my God, the whole team thinks I'm just not trying hard enough. And it just snowballs. And it all came from that one comment of a misinformed engineer that says, oh, you can brake a bit harder into turn 1. Mm-hmm. So it's a team effort, all of the stuff in the cars, massive, massive team effort, where once the riders are out on the bike, although there's a massive team effort to get you there, it's up to you once you're on it. You are away.
Amazing. I wasn't planning to talk about that first, but you've piqued my interest. So, do you like that aspect of the individual? Do you like it going? Because the way I'd sort of envision it for you is it must be going. All these people, like you say, quite rightly, have worked their arse off to get the bike ready for this, and now it's you to go off and almost show their work, like to show the credibility of their work, and go, "I'm here to prove that I'm the best driver with the best bike now."
It is. If you listen to your John McGuinness's, Guy Martin, Michael Dunlops, and all those top end road racers, and so many of the Grand Prix guys, and they all say something similar. There is nothing better than putting your helmet on, the smell of the helmet, and when the visor clicks shut, you are in your own world, and it is up to you to make things happen. And you're shutting yourself off completely from the outside world. So whether they're sitting at the top of Bray Hill, or whether they're sitting on the grid at Silverstone ready for the British Grand Prix or whatever, that 30 seconds, that minute of where it's all calm and whatever, you can't replace that anywhere. People often ask me about, say, what did you do when you weren't racing? Often look for things to try and replace the buzz, lots of the adrenaline rush, but it was lots of little things like that where you were in charge of your own destiny. You're sitting there and you get that 30 seconds, that minute, or just complete switch off from the outside world, and you've just got to sit there and focus on what it is you've got to do, and you've got to do it better than the rest of them.
I know, and it's wow. I can't even comprehend that aspect of the minute of just going, I'm in absolute control of everything for the next however long the race is. Like you say, whether you're doing an endurance race or the thing. Obviously you have the combat of the opposition and the other riders, but it is all a one-man band. Obviously I come from a rugby team where there's 14 other guys, but you are there by yourself, and then obviously pit crews and things come into it. But that whole...
I think if you're a rugby background, Bath rugby team used Don McPherson as their sports psychologist behind the scenes. Don McPherson also did some stuff with Andy Murray, also did some stuff with some very world-class motorcycle and motor car racers. And he's a great believer in Philip Steve Peters wrote a book, The Chimp Paradox, about the chimp being loose in your head, and don't let it take control, because once it takes control, you can't shut it up. And it's ruling what you're doing, rather than you operating at a subconscious level where it's all of your natural things that's making things work, and not the fear side of it. So, as I said, fear's good. You can use it, gets the adrenaline going, but it can also sabotage you very quickly. And it doesn't matter whether you're on a bike or a rugby field and you've got to hunker down in the scrum and you've got some 22-stone guy about to land on top of you. That definitely focuses the attention. Coming from the middle of the Scottish borders, went to Galashiels Academy and got roped into a bit of rugby. I could run. Now, I could run fast, usually for all of the wrong reasons. But I
won't ask you about those with a camera in your face. I'll ask you about those when we finish.
Yeah, but I played flanker for a little while, and as I said, grabbed the ball and I could go. But even at 14, 15-year-old, some of these kids looked like they were all born when they were 21 with a beard, and they were all wearing about 18 stone. And when they hit you, dear God, it hurt. I said, I've fallen off bikes well over 100 miles an hour before and just picked myself up, dusted myself down. I've done a bit of a gravel rash. It's kind of not been that bad. But when some of these guys hit you, honestly, talk about knock the wind out of you. And I had thought, I suppose, as I said, being from the middle of the Scottish borders, I had a choice. As I said, do I play rugby or take the motorsport route? So I took the motorsport route instead.
Wanted to stand out a bit because every man and his dog plays rugby over here.
Yeah. I think with the rugby teams, though, again, it must have been, I think, 1983 or 84. You might be able to throw some light on this. It was the year Scotland won the Grand Slam.
Oh, that would be the last one of the Five Nations. When was that?
It was. So it was about 83 or 84. And
it's definitely one of those two, or 85. It might have been 85.
It could have been. But that year, I won the Scottish 350 motorcycle racing championship. So what is now the junior class,
Right.
And junior super stock or whatever it is. And the presentation for it was in I've forgotten the name of the hotel in Edinburgh. But anyway, Scottish rugby team, the night that they won the Five Nations and won the Grand Slam, we were all in the hotel on the same night. So talk about a messy night. And I knew quite a lot of the guys from Galashiels, Melrose, Hoyk and whatever that was all in the team. So we had all just kind of bundled into the bar, and I don't even know what time we got out of there, to be honest. As I said, they were plying me with drink, and all of these boys, they're professional drinkers. So I think that they were professional drinkers that played a little bit of rugby on the side, where I was a motorbike racer that did a little bit of drinking on the side. And yeah, I just wasn't in that league at all. So yeah, probably the less said about what happened at the end of that night, the better.
See, that's the kind. I think that'd be two good crowds to mix together: the motor racing crowd and the rugby crowd for drinkers. But I don't know whether that's just my experiences that I got shown at Le Mans throughout my young years of what was it, stubby pyramids with the beer
That's
bottles.
right. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. I've seen a few. About 18 or 19 high, I think, was about the record that I've seen them, and I thought, yeah, that was fair play to these guys. I can't do that now, whether it's an age thing or not. I'll have a drink, nothing to excess. Never ever get drunk and fall over. Well, I haven't for a while anyway. And
I was going to say, I'm saying nothing about my situation.
But I think years ago, I think, you would go out and have a couple of beers a night before a race and things. And as I said, it was all very sociable. Mm-hmm. And it's changed quite a lot now, where people are a lot more professional. As I said, the younger kids and things now coming through. There's still quite a bit of social side of it, a bit of witty banter and things goes on in the clubhouses at the circuits. But it's not. Yeah, it should be. As I said, I do it for fun. I said, and I think some of the kids are trying to get a career through it. Some of them take themselves far too seriously. There's a current craze at the moment that lots of them are surrounding themselves with mentors, and it seems to be the done thing that you've got to have a mentor.
Former pros or just more experienced drivers.
Some of them are current. Some of them are current pros that will go to the club meetings. Some of them are former pros that never really quite achieved. But sometimes, like teachers, sometimes the best teachers didn't actually do it themselves, but they are very, very good teachers because they know all the things that went wrong. Mm-hmm. But it's getting a bit controversial now. But there is some people out there taking money under false pretenses. When you listen to what some of these kids are told, and you just want to go, no. Just stop.
Yeah.
As I said, they think that they're going to make it into the GP paddock because this guy's telling them to brake 50 yards later and do you've got to push harder and do this and do that. And it changes corner by corner, lap by lap. And what do they say? The seat of the pants feel. Just what it feels like. Seat of the pants, what the bike's actually telling you. And as I said, the physical side of it, unless you are really on it, you can't push. Nothing feels right. The monkey's loose in your head, and it's screaming, "Stop! You're going to die! Slow down! Shut the throttle!" And everybody else is telling you to speed up and go, and they usually crash and just end up writing bikes off. So I think just no pun intended on it, but slowly catch a monkey. It's just learn your trade. Surround yourself with good people that will give you good advice, and you don't always have to pay a fortune for it. But it's just listen to the right people.
Well, the thing I was always taught as well, I was like, if you're good enough, they'll come find you anyway. So
very much so. Yes, without a doubt. Everybody's different, and some people need a little bit of direction. They're good at what they're doing. And that they will run around about and they will practice more than anybody else. And as long as they correct the errors, that's fine. But it's a bit like what I said earlier. They'll run around about in circles only practicing bad habits and reinforcing bad habits. So you need to work out what's right and what's wrong, which all of the data that is available now And again, I've done lots of stuff with this with the young kids in cars where you can watch them on a camera, watch what their hands do on the steering wheel, watch how they're riding the bike, what their feet are doing on the footrests. And I'm sure you've seen some YouTube clips and clips that you use from the BSB footage and things, and you think they've got some very strange camera angles, and you watch what the guys are doing with their feet. But as well as doing the Rossi dangle with this sticking their leg out the side and sort of leg out going into the corners. But if you look at the soles of their boots in the middle of the ball of their foot, the footrest has almost worn a hole in the sole of their boots. And that's just because of the sheer physical pressure and effort that goes through the sole of their boots onto the footrests. And they're actually using their hands and arms a lot less on the bike to steer the bike than what you think. It's
almost like riding the horse. Then they're sort of using the hips to sort of.
It is. Yes, yeah.
I had Ryan Manny on last week, so I'm still very much got the horse racing getting it through.
Yeah. He literally lived in the next house to my sister in Selkirk for a long time. They were neighbours, so my sister still got a lot of horses. She taught me to ride.
Well,
And
I owe him a pint, so next time you're up, we'll get you in the pub as well, and we'll go for a pint, the three of us.
Yeah. And where somebody had asked me, so can you ride a horse? I said, no, but I can stay on one. Two different things.
Well, I knew they were out of my league when Grand National when I went to meet, and he quoted Sherlock Holmes, and he went, "They're dangerous at either end and crafty in the middle." And I went, "Well, if you're thinking that, not a hope in hell I'm getting on one of them."
Yeah, technically my wife can ride a horse fine, but as I said, I can stay on one, I can sit on one. But you're right. I always think the brakes are a bit intermittent, and you're never quite sure with traction control or the anti-wheelie system. I can't work out. I can't find the switch.
I was going to say the difference between your mount and his is when you tell yours to stop with your two fingers on the brake, it normally does that.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Definitely.
Oh well. Ryan, if you're listening, we have a great amount of respect for what you managed to achieve.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's still freezing cold up in Selkirk. Ryan, it has not changed one little bit. I was up there last week and it was about just over 10 degrees. So that was another jumper colder.
10 degrees, that's warm in Selkirk. Everybody would have been in shorts around you and you'd be in a
short. Yeah, it would be.
Right. Roddy, I want to get to the very, very start. So you get into bikes, like you said, you had the rugby that you were sort of dragged into as a virtue of being found in Gala, and then, like you said, you sort of moved off to try the motorsport route. So when was your first interaction with bikes? Was it a step from watching cars and going around and going, "You're telling me people do this on two wheels," or was it I saw somebody flying past the house on one of the Borders roads and thought that looks like that'd be fun?
No, I am a third generation Taylor who is involved in racing. My grandparents had the local grocer's shop in Earlston. I think there was about 8 or 9 brothers, and every single one of them had a motorbike. They used to do the grass tracks in Earlston, used to do the scrambles in Earlston. Then my father got involved in motorbikes. He started building them for people to race. He partially blew himself up with dismantling a grenade and blew his left hand off and ended up partially sighted and eventually went blind. But he is going to go off on a tangent now, I can tell, but he managed to bring up 3 kids. Never claimed disability and just got on with life. But getting on with life because he had a massive interest in motorbikes and had been already building race bikes and doing stuff for people. Him and the local blacksmith in the village, John Brotherson, best of mates for all the years. But anyway, my dad started building racing Nortons for people in the 50s and 60s.
After he's lost the hand?
Yes. Yeah, wow. And still partially sighted. Yeah. So determination and what was it with patience and perseverance? He could pee a hole in a stone. So that was my dad. He would be rummaging through boxes, looking for spare parts, bits and pieces, doing things to put these bikes together. And my brother and I would get involved and have to help him with stuff and set the ignition timing and do the reading of valve degree plates and just how to set the engines up. But the basic mechanics of it, he could still build a bike, and he would build a fast bike. So this is kind of going back to how did I get into it. Eventually, they started doing vintage bike racing. So the bikes that he was building and racing in the sort of 1950s and 60s were eligible for the vintage bike class. So probably mid-1970s, my dad had a couple of people that raced some of his old bikes in the vintage bike class and went out and won on them and did quite well. I think he was quite shrewd in what he did. Dick Irwin, who was multiple Scottish champion at that time, my dad got him to ride one of the vintage bikes, and he went out and rode the bike, but managed to win a few races on it. And then
that must have been quite an honour for your dad, for someone like him to come and accept
it was. Yes, definitely. But Dick had the experience. He was a canny bloke. He knew what he was doing, and
he was all right. He was all right. I heard he was all right.
He was all right. Yeah, definitely all right. And he rode bikes for Jim Darlin, that had Darlin and Sweeney motorcycles in Berwick upon Tweed, and Scremerson or somewhere like that they were from. But anyway. But my dad was friends with Jim Darlin, and they had obviously been talking over a pint, or actually wouldn't it be a glass of whiskey? It would be. He wasn't one for drinking pints unless it was one of his own homebrew. But my dad's homebrew is stuff a legend as well, which again is a story in itself. I could actually do a whole night on things that my dad did.
Yeah, I'll be more than happy to do a part 2 on the legend of the Taylor family.
It is, yeah. But as I said, but anyway, cut a long story short, my brother started racing bikes for him. He had a 500 Norton, and it took him about a year to sort of find his feet, get going. The following year, I think he won the Scottish Vintage Bike Championship. The next year after that, which was the third year, I started racing, and again took a few meetings, find my feet, get going. But then the following year, which I think must have been about 1980, something like that, 79 or 80, either my brother or I won every single race we entered, or I took the class lap record in the vintage bike series, whatever it is we did, at whatever circuit we were in. So either he got it or I got it. So there wasn't a lot of rivalry between us, but it was bloody hard racing. And Douglas would not give you an inch. He really wouldn't. He would run you wide and whatever it would take to get the win. So, as I said, it was just it was full on. And even to this day, some of the guys up there, when I sort of reappeared on the Scottish scene and went to a couple of races, they were saying, "Now, son, now I remember you and your brother racing." And he says, "I can remember watching the vintage bike race, and everybody used to come and watch it." Because he says it was the only one that where you would see two vintage bikes been sliding into the corner, been backed into a corner, and then sliding round the corner, and then getting power slide out the other side again. He says, in a way that a vintage bike should never have been ridden. And,
the back wheel almost enters the corner before the front wheel because you're
it
almost
was, yeah.
Looking like what's it called? Motocross, the speedway where they basically hit the cars at the right angle.
Absolutely, you could see them getting backed into the corner. And as I said, there was an old saying about you rode it that hard to scrub the maker's name off the side of the tyre. And there were the tyres on the front of them, because they're 21-inch wheels, they were Avon Speedmasters. Yeah. Real old classic kind of tyres. But honestly,
I think I've only seen that name in photos from old Le Mans photos.
Yeah, but we were scrubbing the name off the side of the tyre. And they were worn that flat, they were like slicks on the side.
Wow.
So it was, I had a 1929 500 Rudge that we had converted to run on methanol, the same as the speedway bikes, alcohol, dope, or whatever you would like to call it.
That's your dad's home brew as the fuel, isn't it?
It was, yes. You always knew when my dad had the home brew on the go, because he would always light a fire in the back garden to mask the smell of it and burn some leaves so the neighbours couldn't tell. But I think everybody knew. Because, as I said, the local janitor and a couple of the Kirk elders would come round, and they would be sitting there with my dad later on at night. And there was an incident where one of the Kirk elders' wives had to come and collect them. And I remember she wasn't happy. But as I said, that's another story. I will withhold the names to protect the innocent.
It doesn't sound like anybody's innocent, but we'll withhold the names all the same.
No.
Wow, so straight into bikes, third generation. you and your brother are, like you said, you're taking the names off the side of the tires. I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine that led to some fun car journeys home after the two of you going wheel to wheel for 30 odd laps at a time.
It did, and we would get ourselves to the bike races, either East Fortune, Knockhill, and we started going down to Donington and Cadwell and some of the British Championship vintage bike classes and things as well. But East Fortune in particular, we would take my dad and we would deposit him next to the circuit, up against the old gate that was there at the pit exit, out onto the circuit, and we would leave him there and go and jump on the bikes and go off and race. And he would obviously hear the commentary, but he could tell which bike was in front. And if we were in a group, and Jim Oliver, that has unfortunately Jim's gone, it's Wendy now, his daughter owns the bike shop in Denham, but Jim was standing with him one day and the commentator was saying, oh yeah, now that somebody or other came through and he's leading the race, and it's Tom Gaynor, it's in front, closely followed by Douglas Taylor, closely followed by Ronnie Fleming. And my dad goes, well, that's a load of bloody rubbish. He says Douglas is leading that. And he was. The bike was in front. The commentator had got it wrong, and he just knew by the sound of the bike. And this was a group of maybe about 5 of us, all very, very close together. And one of the older guys, Ernie Chapman was his name, where I had made a bit of a youthful lunge underneath him going into a corner, let's say.
The gap was there when you did.
The gap was there. It looked fair game to me. But I caught his throttle cable on the way past from a handlebar end, and I pulled it clean out the twist grip, and it stuck his bike on full throttle, and he's off over the grass on full chat. And he was an old boy, so I'm saying he's an old boy. He was probably my age. He was probably in his late 50s, early 60s. But as I said, I'm sort of 16-year-old and just this gung ho. But he came in. And he, Mr. Taylor, you're going to have to control your boys. They're out of control. And my dad was trying not to laugh. But he was, some of them got a bit emotional about some of the antics that we were up to, for sure. So, but I think the vintage bike thing lasted a couple of years because we very quickly outgrew it.
It sounds like you both outgrew it when you took podiums and lap records from every track you went to.
It was a bit, but as I said, the bikes maybe aesthetically didn't look particularly pleasing. They weren't polished, if you know what I mean. But mechanically, they were absolutely the run free. Everything was free on the bikes. The engines were right. They were set up correctly. The carburation was spot on. All the things that you need to do to make a bike go fast. My dad would have an engine sitting on the bench, and I won't get too technical to bore the people to death, but there'd be nothing but a set of crankcases, a flywheel and a piston and a barrel in it. And he would take his thumb and he would push the piston down the barrel. And unless it went sort of chuff, 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 up and down 5 times, he would take the engine to bits again, rebuild it until he got it to the point that it was that free. It would almost run round at least 5 times on its own. And then he would build the rest of the bike round about it. But the basics, the heart of it had to be right. And even to this day, with the bikes that I'm building and I'm working and I'm doing, it's exactly the same principle. Make sure the innards of it is right, the bike's right, and the rest will be right.
Wow, so is that what you're doing in your daytime when you're not racing them? Are you just building them in the free time, or is this just a hobby on the side?
Again, another story. What I do during the day is I'm trying to keep Mr. Robert Collard right, touring car legend extraordinaire, and his 2 kids. But no, I'm transport director for the Collard Group, so I look after a lot of trucks and roughy-tufty mechanics and various other things, and trying to get them to repair things to either race car or race bike standards. Yeah, it's a bit. Listen, it's just not going to happen. But I'm just not going to go there.
I'll let you off with that because you've given some brilliant answers so far. So I won't ask you to delve deeper.
No.
Talking about your dad's bikes, have you managed to keep any of them, or have they been?
Yes,
have they been
absolutely.
Anywhere,
I've got. I need to get all of this right now. I've got them lined up, so I'll put them into order. There's a parachute bike, which I got when I was 4 years old. It was one of those things that you would throw out an aeroplane with a parachute attached to it, out to arm them, something like that. soldier would jump on it, fold the handlebars up, turn the pedal on, ride it until it ran out of fuel, and then jump off and go and shoot some people. Now, my dad got one of those, chopped the handlebars down, lowered the seat on it, and gave it to me at 4 years old. So that was my 4th birthday. So that was it wasn't my introduction to bikes, because I had been running around sitting on the petrol tank and things of other people's bikes and learning how to ride them. But that was my first ever bike. So I've still got it.
Wow.
Came from Stuart and Ian Thompson, who still has the car breakers scrapyard in Gala Shields. I can remember going to Selkirk to go and collect this bike. Put it in the back of the car and went back to Earlston. My dad had a bit of work to do on it to modify it to get it to all fit a 4-year-old. So the hacksaw was out, a few modifications on it, and that's what I learned to ride a bike on. So I've still got that. Then I've got a 1927 350 BSA, which was my dad's very first bike, which he had when he was 16. Still got the 500 International Norton that my brother raced. I've still got the 500 Rudge that I raced. I've still got another couple of International Nortons. One is a road-going one. I've taken out, raised some money did some charity work for the Blind Veterans Society down in Brighton, and did a charity run from Morton on the Marsh down to Brighton with one of the old Nortons, and had a megaphone on it.
That must have been fun.
They heard it coming from a long way, and a lot of the old boys down there loved it, because my wife will take the mickey out of me because I start making bike noises and saying what it did with all the gear changes, and it's going brrr, brrr. It's just like this big 500 Norton. And a lot of these old boys down there loved that. They thought it was great. So I've still got a lot of the old Norton, and the bikes that mean something to me. As I said, it's got history behind them. As I said, either things that my dad's dragged out a bog somewhere and has tidied them up, done them, and they all run. Every one of them runs.
All of them still go.
All of them still go. And there was one of the Nortons, I think, a couple of years ago. It hadn't run for 25 years. It had just been in the shed, took it out, put some fresh petrol in it, gave it a bit of a turnover, pumped some fresh oil through it, gave it a shove, and away it went. Now, could you do that with something nowadays? It just wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't. So build quality and engineering and all of the rest of it, it's the good stuff. But they weigh an absolute ton. They do. I think they're probably maybe about 300 kilos, something like that, some of these big bikes. And some of the stuff that I'm racing now is maybe about 120.
I was going to say, that's heavier than most cars now, 300 kilos.
Almost, yeah. As you said, you did not want one of them landing on top of you.
You didn't want one going in the back of you either, that's for sure.
Definitely not. No. Definitely not. So bike racing, as I said, career, where did it go? As I said, Alan Duffus Motorcycles, and where are they? Kirkcaldy, Glenrothes. He had a lot of shops round about. Now, Alan, I think he was, 10, 12 times Scottish motorcycle racing champion. I was standing talking to him one day at Knockhill, and I don't know, he'd fallen off and done something else, but he couldn't ride the bike. And a conversation between him and I, where I had said, give the bike to my brother. I said, give him a go on it. So he did. And Douglas went out on this 350 Yamaha and just annihilated. The only way to describe it was he annihilated the field. Sure. And for the first year that he was on that bike, I would have said it didn't matter whether it was an international race at Donington, Silverstone, Brands Hatch, Brands, or wherever. If he finished, he would win. But if he didn't finish, unfortunately, there was always a lot of carnage. He hadn't quite worked out how to stay on the thing.
I was going to say, when you said if, I was like, that implies that it wasn't always the case.
It certainly wasn't, no. And as I said, he destroyed a lot of parts and bits and pieces on that bike. But won the Scottish Championship on it. Beat a lot of world-class people at some of the big international races. So Alan, in his infinite wisdom, had thought, I'll give him a 750 to race as well. And he probably took the 750 a lot better than he did to the smaller bike.
Really?
And absolutely just flew on this 750 Yamaha. And when it was all right and whatever, completely untouchable, as I said, and I would describe it as it was scary to watch how fast this thing was. As I said, producing, I remember it's about 150 brake horsepower on little narrow skinny tires back in the 80s. And as I said, but it was just phenomenally fast. These things would do 200 mile an hour back then. And it was just, there was a very small group of people that were really able to ride them to their max. And he was one of them for sure. And Alan then had decided, he gave me a TZ125 Yamaha, which I raced and managed to win the 125 Scottish Championship on. And then he had helped me out with a 250 as well. I always liked the smaller, less powerful bikes, where my brother, for sure, he liked the thing that would rip your arms off. And they were animals. That's the only way to describe them, absolute animals. And it was only the brave of the brave that really raced them that hard. Wow. So again, that was probably about 1981 to 80, 81, 82. Again, part of the story, it's difficult. It's 1982 was not a good year. In the space of the 1 year.
We'll get into. I don't want to interrupt you. Sorry there, because it's a great story. I want to get into that. Because I wanted to describe your career in sort of the three parts, the three chapters.
Okay. Yeah.
So, no. Because we were talking about the bikes you own still and the ones you had, and I didn't know if you were finished that. Did you? Have you gone? Because you were talking
I just went off piste like I do.
Well, the thing is, you did, and it was such a brilliant story, and I was like, I want to hear the story more than the question. So I want to ask you quickly, the two bikes you said you still had your brother's Norton, the 500, and yes, 500 Rochester. Is that the two from that season where you were going head to head?
Yes,
the two exact
absolutely. Bikes? Still got them. Got them.
Wow, that's incredible. So. You definitely need to get them somewhere for people to see, and then find someone must have an old video clip of it kicking about somewhere.
I think there is. I think that there's definitely stuff out there on YouTube of me racing in the 1980s at Donington and places like that, and ITV World of Sport Superbike stuff and things. But I'm sure there's some of the older historians that like to follow some of the classic bike stuff and things. Has got many's a picture and 8mm film from Knockhill that they'll have taken back in the day and stuff and things. So I have seen clips of it here and there, definitely. So no, still got them.
Wow. So before we talk about your pro career and all the incredible stuff that you've already alluded to, and we're definitely going to get back in, because like you said, you were winning championships. Like you said, it took you 6 or 7 race meets to find your feet, and then you were just taking victories home as if it was the only thing to do at a race weekend. But before we get into that, I want to talk about the expensiveness of motorsport. Like we touched on it earlier about how people are paying $5,000 to go to a track day and do testing. But so you'll know yourself, like when kids go to karts and then they go to things like that. And I find it quite interesting when because a lot of people get into racing later if they don't do it when they're really young. Because I don't know if you've ever seen it. Top Gear did an episode on it where they gave themselves a budget of a price of golf clubs. I think it was like £900 or something for the price of golf clubs. Yeah, and they went racing. Obviously, they didn't do it on bikes, but how would a younger person get into bike racing? Do you do the whole karting route, or?
There's a few different routes to it, and there's a few different trains of thought on it. Yeah. The traditional route at the moment is that the kids get into mini bike racing, pocket bikes, on indoor go-kart circuits. So they're riding little, 50, not even 50cc engines, and they're running around there at 5 years old, learning the craft, just learning the lines, working out what the throttle does, working out grip, what they need to do with braking, just racing, elbow to people. And Alan McIntosh, who runs a lot of the kids up in Scotland, he provided a fantastic platform and opportunity for kids to come through that series. So kids that are at the top of the game at the moment, your Lewis Rollo, Roy Skinner, there's a very long list of names, ones that's all come through that route, where as kids they've raced pocket bikes, mini bikes, or indoor go-kart circuits. And then eventually they've then progressed onto slightly bigger bikes. It's a 13, 14-year-old that can run around Knockhill, East Fortune, places like that, and they're allowed loose out with the adults. It's expensive, as you said. It's got the word motor in front of it, which I think should be replaced by must have money. Because
replacing with a $6,000 price tag.
It is. Anything involving the word motor, you just know it's going to cost you. And there's different ways to do it. I think the CB 500 Championship in Scotland at the moment is one of the biggest entries on the Scottish grid. The CB 500 class within Dave Stewart's Thundersport Championship. I think at Donington there was about 130 CB 500s, all there, all racing, all trying to compete for the top 32 slots on the grid on the A final, and incredibly competitive. And you're Leon Haslam, James Tosland, and again, Ryan Vickers. There's lots of big names that's all come through this CB 500 class. Now, even today, you can go and buy a good CB 500 for about 1,800 to $2,000.
Right.
Buy the bike. You can then go and race it at Thundersport. You'll need a new set of tyres. You'll need some spares, do bits and pieces. But for a race weekend, it's probably around £650 for your 3 days racing.
Right.
And that's what you will need to be able to go racing. Get the laps in, get the experience. That's the first run on the ladder. So coming from the mini bike series that you would go through, as I said, lad and dad, going to a karting circuit with a small bike in the back of the car, that's what you're there progressing onto. And from there, just keep shifting the decimal point one place to the right all the time, because when you get into even the British Superbike teams, you're having to take very, very big budgets to the team to be able to do that. But there is so many different classes, it's diluted it quite a bit. But back in the day, in the 1980s, I think, where there was a 125, a 250, a 350, and a superbike class, and if you were in pure racing, that was it. There was nothing else. If you wanted to do something different, you raced a production bike. You bought an LC, which was a road-going 250 or 350 Yamaha, took the lights off it, put some race tyres on it, tweaked it a little bit, and away you went, and you went racing a road bike. So it was a production bike class. But now there is so many different classes. Now, I've always had an interest in things racing, but there's so much of it, I struggle to follow it. So how an average person coming into it can try and make sense of it, good luck to them.
Yeah. Oh, I try, because I'm an advocate for a few sports. I have like a few that are my personal favourites, and even just trying to keep up with 3 or 4, not even to the in-depth level of a diehard for a specific sport, is unbelievable.
Yeah, no, definitely, as I said. But it's so there's a few different routes to get into the motorsport game. I think it's great. I think the paddock life for young kids, where they're all running about there playing at night on their mountain bikes and just come wheelie competitions and all the things to do. It's keeping them off the street. It's giving them an interest and all the rest of it. And I suppose you got to look at the positives. They're going to spend all of their money on motorbikes and stuff, so there's no money for drinking drugs.
It's a very good way to look at it. I know my kid's not going to do anything stupid because he's skint.
That's right. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, definitely there. Well, if any young listeners get involved, get in your dad and lad car and then get yourself to the CB 500 in Scotland. Dave Stewart Thundersport, that's the name. Free promo, yep. Dave Stewart Thundersport.
That's right, yeah.
There we go. Right, so I want to talk about the beginning of your pro career. And I mean, I say your pro career, it was back in the 70s and 80s when you first started, but you pretty much, as you said, got your first bike at 16. Your dad gave it to you, built it, somehow built the perfect engine without being able to see the thing, and then still made it run like the clappers. So how did that go? Just how was the first few years as a pro driver / successful rider? Well,
I don't know about pro. I was working as a mechanic. Originally started working at TB Oliver's in Denham, along with Steve Hislop. So multiple TT winner and everything else. And yeah, absolute world class. I think Rob McElhenney, who ran the Yamaha team that Steve raced for a little while, would describe him as a flawed genius. On his day, yeah, but something very, very special. But I suppose in some ways I'm not that dissimilar to myself, because if all of the ducks didn't line up, it wasn't right, and he wouldn't do as well as he should do. And I kind of adopt that approach where I would say even today, and even going back to the 1980s, if all of the ducks lined up, look out. I would have a go, and I would have a go at, it didn't matter who it was, whether it's Carl Fogarty or whoever it was, I would be in there and I'd be in the mix.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't right, I wasn't right. I wouldn't push the bike to the 110% that you needed to do to be able to get to the front of some of that kind of stuff. So the results went up and down a little bit, I think, when I sort of hit international level and did some of the British Championship stuff, what is now BSB. And not quite as consistent as you'd want to be, but that was where I was trying to do everything myself. And I think where you can't. You've got to surround yourself with good people. And it's something I often say is, if I could go back and do it again, what would I do different? Yeah, I would employ a top-notch mechanic to come and help me and do a lot of the stuff for me. And
so you were going down as a proper one-man team at the weekend to the meet, engineer, mechanic?
It was. Yeah, that was it. I had some mates that would come with me that would come and help, and as he said, and away we'd go and race. So, and this is where it progressed from, as he said, the vintage bike racing. Alan Duffus gave me a bit of sponsorship with some Yamahas, and then ultimately Dave Christie, who ran a driving school, ex-chief of police for Fife and somewhere else. When he took retirement, he set up a driving school teaching people to drive. So he had dozens of cars in Glenrothes, Kirkcaldy, Dunfermline, all round about, all teaching people to drive. Everybody paid cash back in the day. And Davey was always quite happy to help me out with buying bikes, spares for bikes, and all of the rest. To be honest, to this day, I still owe Davey Christie so much. And I'm so grateful for what he did for me, because without it, I could never have done it. It's just, it would never have happened, where he threw an obscene amount of money at bike racing and helped out quite a few different people. And as I said, that was where it sort of progressed a bit. But I was still doing an awful lot of stuff on my own. I had a guy, Hamish Jameson, his name was, originally from Shetland, did an apprenticeship in Edinburgh as an engineer, but he ended up helping me. He was good friends with my cousin Graham. Again, another tailor with another history. He was Scottish production bike champion, and ever so, as I said, just another tailor that raced. So lunacy runs deep in the family, I can tell you.
I think you're confusing lunacy and success there, because it sounds like you're all if you said you're consistently ploughing it into the tyre wall at first lap, I got, you're all lunatics. But
yeah. I mean, people say, oh, these guys that race motorbikes, they must all be mad. No, I just think, as I said at the beginning, I'm just a lot of like-minded idiots that all like running around about and having a ball and getting the adrenaline rush and everything else. It's a special group of people, and there's all sorts of reasons that people do it. You're sitting there on the grid, and some people will be there, and you can see they're just about being sick with nerves, like the James Hunt thing, where he was regularly thrown up before a race, and you think, why would you put yourself through that? Why on earth do people do that? But as he said, it's a bit of the buzz afterwards when it's all finished. You can't wait to go and do it all again. And but it says at the gate when you come in, when you get your ticket, when you sign on the entries, motorsport is dangerous. And I think that there's a lot of people that read too much into it. As he said, it's try to make it too safe, because it'll never be safe. The speeds that you're going, when something goes wrong, and if you're hurtling down Bray Hill at 160 odd mile an hour and you fall off, the likelihood is it's not going to be a good outcome. It's not.
It's going to hurt in some way.
It is. You fall off at Donington going down Craner curves at 120 odd mile an hour, and you're likely going to end up on your backside, sliding up the grass at 120 miles an hour. And provided that you've not landed very awkwardly or you've not hit anything, you're going to pick yourself up and walk away again. You'll have a bit of a gravel rash and a bit sore, but as I said, you've got to minimise the risk. Keep it under control. Don't let your emotions take over and let your inability run away with itself. The throttle works both ways. And it doesn't have to be on full chat all the time.
I feel that's destined to be on a T-shirt at some point. The throttle goes both ways.
It does very much so. So nowadays it's called traction control, where the young kids just whack the throttle back 100% and hope the electronics do it all for you. Going back to, as I said, racing in the 1980s and things, there was no traction control, there was no nothing. Everything was just, as I said earlier, the seat of your pants. If you've got good seat of the pants feel, and with my father and having engines and things that would blow up, I've always been reasonably mechanically sympathetic. So whether it's driving a road car or whether it's racing a bike, you just don't drive it to destruction. When you feel things starting to go wrong, just nurse it a little bit. Be a little bit sympathetic with it, and it'll keep going and you'll get the finish. And again, now later in life, racing, for sure, I've won races over this last couple of years where I've nursed things. I've been sympathetic to it. And I've gone, you know what? Sometimes you need to lose the corner to win the race. Where the young guy's gone whizzing in underneath me and another couple of laps up round the circuit, as he said, he's lying in a heap somewhere. I thought, oh, well, that wasn't going to last. Yeah. And other times you've got to lose the race to win the championship. Where you could go somewhere, go to Donington on any one given weekend, and somebody has got it better than you. The bike's better set up. They've not had a shit week at work where everything's all gone wrong and they've had nothing to do all week other than just train and make sure that they're ready for Donington, and they've rocked up and they're going to be difficult to beat. And sometimes you've just got to let them have it and take the second. I think the No Limits Championship, I think I finished second. I think it was either 8 or 9 times.
I can tell you right now, I've got it right in front of me. It was 8 times.
8 times. Oh, there you go. So it's the consistency, and sometimes let the other person have it. And I won a few races in it, but at the same time, it was sometimes I had to make smart decisions and just go for it and let them take the race win. So as I said, sometimes you got to lose the corner to win the race. Sometimes you got to lose the race to win the championship. And if you're all gung ho, it doesn't always work.
Exactly. You can't go 100 miles per hour around. Well, not 100 miles per hour is a bad example, but you can't go full throttle around every corner. Is what I'm trying to say. You can't.
No. Sometimes less is more.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with golf. I mean, you probably know who Jack Nicklaus is. Jack Nicklaus, the golfer.
Yes. Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah.
Your mentality is very similar to his. From just the way you're saying it there, it's very much because I remember listening to him, and it was during the Masters, and he went, I looked at the board, and I remember if I was in the lead, I didn't think I need to keep getting further shots ahead. He went, I just know that they've got to push to try beat me, so I just need to keep making par, and I'm fine.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're very much that. You're very much just if I just keep going slow, and it's almost like the classic slow and steady will win the race, isn't it?
It is.
Cliches we're getting on.
It is. No, definitely. And I think going back to my late teens, early 20s, when I'm starting to race and things, that I adopted a little bit of a similar approach, but not enough of it. And as I said, where I think over that period of time where I was racing, I was definitely racing against the monkey in my head, where it was loose, telling you all sorts of things. And as I said, willpower, determination, having the ability to switch off to the outside world, to all of the things that was going on at that time. And you can only do that for a set period of time. You can't keep that up. And with lots of events that had happened in the early 1980s, and then I continued racing, and to have the mental capacity to deal with lots of different things that life throws at you. As he said, to compete at that level when it's not going right, it does become very, very difficult. So now, when I'm coming back and having another go at it, if I'm having a bad day, I'll laugh at it and I'll just say to my wife, come on, I'm going to go and have a beer and sit down and have a chat, and we'll just so take it on the chin and don't worry about it, and we'll pick the pieces up in the next week, fortnight, or however long it is until I'm out again. As I said, and don't let it destroy you. It's not the be all and end all. It's not going to be MotoGP. We're doing this for fun, and I need to go to work on Monday morning.
That's it. That's the important thing, and I think a lot of people could learn from that in every sport. Of you've got to remember you're here for fun, and at the end of the day, everybody just goes back to work on Monday morning anyway.
It is, yeah, and some people take it way too serious. I've seen lots of the trophy parents who are screaming and shouting at their kids because they've not tried hard enough or not done what they should have done. And I think over about a 10-year period, my son raced go-karts. I think it was probably only twice, I think, that we really had crossed words where I had sort of said to him, what the hell are you doing? Just, you need to get a grip and sort yourself out, because your head's just not in it. And he kind of had a word with himself and then carried on again. But as I said, not racing myself. As I said, life takes over and all the rest of it. As I said, he won the British Kart Championship, won a European Championship, and finished 5th in the world with stuff that engines and bits and pieces that I had put together and done and managed to run. So as I said, but that's another story in itself. That's fortunately, as I said, he chose to get involved in 4 wheels and not 2. He did have a very short period of time on a motocross bike and did quite well at it, but just it didn't seem to light his fire. So
it sounds like he was all right with 4 wheels as well, to be fair to him.
Yeah, but going back to the trophy parent thing, we were at a schoolboy motocross thing, and he's leading the local club championship, and he had said to me one day about, I've had enough now. I think we'll go swimming or we'll go do something else now. And it's halfway through the day. So I'm loading the bike in the back of the van. And there was a couple of other dads going, where are you going? I said, I'm going home now. I said, I'm going to get his sisters out swimming or doing whatever. I said, so we're going to go and see what they're doing. He says, but you can't let him do that. I said, I can and I will, because if he's not wanting to do it, I said, that's up to him. I said, if he wants to do it, I said, I'll help him do it. But if he doesn't want to do it, I'm not going to force him to do it. It's fun. And just walked away from it. But some of the people, as I said, go-karting in particular, they're spending hundreds of thousands of pounds on their 10, 12-year-old kids in the space of a year to try and win British Championships and all the rest of it. And it is into hundreds of thousands that they're spending. And the pressure that they put on these kids is unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. I saw the likes of Lando Norris, George Russell, all of these kind of people. They came through the karting world when I was involved in it. But very grounded. The kids wanted to race. They wanted to be there. They wanted to be successful. And they wanted to do whatever it took to try and win. Complete different mindset. And that's why they're in Formula One now. Is because that naturally they had that in them. And that both their parents was keen for them to do well and provided the correct environment for them to do well in. But neither Mark Norris or any George Russell's parents or anyone else, never once did I see them shouting at them, screaming at them, telling them that they've got to do well. They would give them a hug if they did well, and again give them another hug if they had a bad day. And just went through it, and the kids thrived on that. But the ones that were being screamed and shouted at and all the rest of it, they're only doing it to try and please the parents for all the wrong reasons. So it's a strange world, the motorsport game that we're in, and it doesn't matter whether it's cars or bikes. I see a lot of similarities between the two, and I think young kids coming up through the racing world and things, they said, you're right in what you said, you've got to do it because you're enjoying it. It is fun. If it's fun, it's easy, and they will do a lot better at it.
I was going to say, I always played better when I was having fun, so I imagine that's a very transferable experience to everything, especially something like motorsport.
Definitely, without a doubt, it's got to be fun. And as I said, at the age of 58, I'm now having fun, and that's what I do. On a good day, I'll have a go. If I'm having a bad day, I'll go and take the piss out of some of the like-minded idiots running around in circles with me, and just have a laugh about it. And usually they're much younger than me. Usually end up taking the pee out of me a lot more. But what do they say? If don't give it if you can't take it.
Exactly. If you can't laugh at yourself, you've got no right to
Yeah,
laugh at
I do regularly. Fortunately, I have to. Yeah, my wife doesn't let me off with it. If I start to get too serious, she'll have a stern word with me.
I feel we must know the same people, because all my friends will never let me get any humble in that.
No,
Every week when this goes out, they go, "Are your usual 3 listeners that all happen to live in your same household watching the podcast this week?" Stuff like that. Keep you humble.
Yeah, that's right.
Amazing. So I want to touch on 1982, as you said before I stopped you the first time. And like you said, I don't want to tell the story because they're your words and I want you to share them. So if you wouldn't mind picking off in 1982 or how you...
Yeah, big part of my life. Very, very difficult part of it, as I said. And this, it affected everything that I did all the way through, even to today, how things, I look at life and things that you've got to do and bits and pieces. I said 1982, my brother's got a TZ 750, a TZ 500, had gone to Donington, beat some of the guy Bob Smith that was the current British champion, Steve Parrish that was Sheen's teammate, Keith Ewan, world front runner. As I said, Wayne Gardner, a lot of the Americans that came over. Yeah, as he said, and he's running at the front end of that. So Sheen is in the latter stages of his career. And as I said, Douglas is just starting to make a name for himself on the British Championship scene and some of the internationals and winning some very, very big races. Sponsored by Alan Duffus at the time. We both were. And I would go and do the support races either on a TZ125 Yamaha or a 250. And back in the day, no electronics with scanning and signing on or anything, but you had to be 18 years old to be able to race at international level. And again, a bit of a dodge went on here, where Douglas would go and sign on, and then 10 minutes later, I would go back in and sign on with his race license. Now, I had a race license of my own, but I wasn't 18. And technically, I wasn't really eligible to race. But I would go and do the international races with him and just sign on as him. But they had my name down in the programme as me. But somehow or another, as I said, they never actually put the two together. So I did several races before I was 18 when I probably shouldn't have done. But good experience. You can't get away with that now. But I think, as I said, I was finishing within the top 10. I was there or thereabouts. So I wasn't holding people up or making rookie silly mistakes in it where I would stand out in the crowd. But just that year, things were starting to evolve. Some of the bigger teams were starting to look at what Douglas was doing. And Alan Duffus had took on the ownership and started to run Knockhill, and decided to do a reverse direction race at Knockhill. Changed the circuit, and whatever happened on that day, we still really don't know. Stuart Burkhart was the other guy's name. His bike would not start. He pushed it down pit lane, pushed it out onto the circuit, and there's a blend line, they call it, which you should never cross, which basically keeps you safe, keeps you over the right-hand side of the circuit. But he crossed it and he shoved the bike straight over the wrong side of a blind hill. And unfortunately, Douglas was coming up the hill from the other side, flat on the tank, 150, 160 mile an hour, and collected Stuart Burkhart slap in the middle of the circuit. Wow. The absolute carnage it literally looked like a bomb had gone off, with just bits of bike and all over the place, and it was and Stuart died at the scene. instantly, just with his injuries. Douglas, after what seemed like an eternity at the circuit, a catalogue of disasters at the circuit where the ambulance wasn't taxed, MOT'd, insured. It didn't want to drive out onto the road to take him down to the hospital. The oxygen cylinders in the ambulance didn't work. We had friends running around the paddock trying to open up the oxygen in the ambulance with welding spanners, and it was just unbelievable. The paramedics couldn't get his helmet off. He was choking. I ended up having to take his helmet off him at the scene. My dad's there wandering around the pits, not really knowing what's going on, and obviously completely knew that something horrendous was going on, but not quite aware of it all. And Douglas ended up in the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary. After about a week with serious head injuries, started to make a bit of progress. They started to take him out of the induced coma that he was in. But something went wrong. We really don't know what, but he took a turn for the worse and never really recovered from that. So over the next 2 years, just gradually deteriorated. And this is what I was saying earlier about the mindset and having the ability to switch off from things. Now, it says on the ticket, and when you sign on and you get a pass at the gate and before you go out onto the circuit, there's bloody great big signs everywhere that says motorcycle racing is dangerous. I know it's dangerous. We had travelled many as 1,000 miles together in vans. We had seen various other accidents. I think in the late 70s, early 80s, the attrition rate of riders was quite high. And you just think, why do people go out and do that? We do. It's just what we do. And there was lots of discussions on what if something happens, and etc., and what would you do if you're hurt, or what would you do if you're hurt, etc. So we had both said, listen, just do what you think is right, what you want to do. If you want to carry on, you carry on. And so that I made a decision. I didn't race the next weekend, which was at Ingliston in Edinburgh, which is a round of the Scottish Championship, and I didn't go and race there. But 2 weekends after that was East Fortune, and I decided that I was going to go back and race. So I did, and won the 125 race, and I thought, yeah, that was the right thing to do. But been able to switch everything off, because it was very, very difficult, all very raw at that period of time. So managed to make it to the end of the season. Now, I had touched on, I was good friends with Steve Hislop, but probably better friends with his younger brother, who was Gary. And Gary and I had teamed up, and we went and raced in Ireland together and did a few other big races together. Now, I went off to Donington at the end of the year in October to do a round of what was the Marlborough Clubman's Series, which was the biggest club series in the UK, and fell off, landed on my shoulder, dislocated my shoulder, broke my wrist and whatever. But as I said, yeah, got away with it. Gary decided that he had been leading the Silith Club Championship, went to Silith, he fell off, landed on his head. Unfortunately, the bike spun round and hit him, and he was killed outright at the scene. Wow. So, and Jock Taylor, who was world sidecar champion in 1982, as well as, I think, second cousin, or there's a relationship in there somewhere along the line. And he had gone to Imatra in Finland, and was killed at Finland. So 1982 was not a good year for sure within the bike race world. So 1983, I decided to carry on, and I had thought, so Alan Duffus, I think, was very, very upset by the whole thing, blamed himself for it, for providing the bikes, providing the circuit. I look back on it, it was nothing more than a bizarre chain of events that you could have stepped off the road and been hit by a bus. And for whatever happened, Stuart Birkett, the bike not starting, why he pushed the thing to the wrong side of the line, what the marshal was doing to let him out, why they changed the circuit direction. As I said, too many ifs and buts. It's just one of these things that happened. And Woody said, is it because we were motor racing? No, I can rationalise it and go, do you know what? You could have been hit by a brick dropping off a building. It was bizarre. It was so bizarre as that. It wasn't anything to do with the fact that we were motor racing. It was just a bizarre chain of events, and that's what happened. So 1983, started to look at what it was I was going to do. I still had the 125 Yamaha. Along came Davy Christie, who had said, I've got a spare bike. And he gave me a 350 Yamaha. So in 1983, whilst I can only describe as watching my brother slowly die, I won the 125 and 350 Scottish Championships.
Simultaneously?
Yes, in the same year. Yeah. And there was all sorts of things going on. And I remember one of the races, it might have been in 84 by this time, but I was certainly vying with Howard Selby for the Scottish 350 Championship. And we were tied on points going into the second last round. And he went on to be European champion and all sorts. As I said, Howard, fantastic career that he had. But I'm racing it against him in the 1980s. And I was sitting on the bike at East Fortune on the dummy grid, all ready to go out to sort of do battle for the Scottish Championship. And this unknown girl comes up to me and says, oh, well, good luck, Roddy. Hope you do well. It's an awful shame about your brother, isn't it? And I'm sitting there on the grid just before I went out. And the guy that was mechanicking for me at the time, Hamish, I just handed him the bike and kind of just wandered off and had a I don't know, I just bloody had a serious word with myself in my helmet, and had just as he said, sometimes he said, take a breath, get a grip, and as I said, put the monkey back in its box.
The chimp back in its box, yeah.
It was, yeah, because it was out screaming for sure. It was out, and I didn't win the race, but I'd finished second to it. But I didn't really lose out on any points, didn't make any mistakes or whatever. But that was a real tough moment where you think, why am I here? Why am I doing this? And went to the last round in at Knockhill, and we were exactly tied on points. And it didn't matter if I was going to finish. If I had crashed and didn't finish, I was still going to finish second in the championship. If I beat Howard, I was going to win the championship. Or if he beat me, he would win the championship. Or if he crashed, it didn't matter. He was still going to finish second. There was nobody within the points close enough to do us any real harm. So it was just down to him and I. And as I said, with everything that was all going on, the guy that sponsored Howard was Jim Bald, and Dave Christie, the fellow that sponsored me, and there was a big group of people, and there was some of this only came to light after the event. But anyway, I started the race. Howard got away a long way in front of me. I got held up on the first lap. I think it was about a 15-lap race or something like that, and the first 5 laps didn't make any inroads into him at all. There was maybe about a 5-second gap between where he was and where I was, and we both run around about the same kind of speed. Nothing changed, and I can remember thinking to myself on the bike, and I thought, well, if I crash, I'm still going to finish second. But if I don't crash, I've got to beat him. And I've got to take the win. There is no ifs or buts about it. And it was a bit of a, I used Douglas as a motivational tool for then, because I had thought, what would he have done? And I would have thought, well, he wouldn't have been fanning around about here, and they would have just bloody sent it in at 100 mile an hour and sawed the consequences. So that's what I did. So I think it took me about 3 laps to catch him, past him. And Howard said afterwards, he says, never ever in a million years are going to catch you. He says, you passed me. He says, somewhere where I never expected you to overtake me. And he says, I wasn't going to live with you. So the fella that sponsored Howard had bought a whole load of champagne and all sorts to celebrate Howard's success. And fair play to him. He was crying and he handed me it over. Says, there you go. He said, you deserve that. And unbeknown to me, Davy Christie had put a sizable amount of money on the fact where he was standing at the side of the circuit after about lap 4, and somebody had said, oh, that's it, it's Howard's. And Davy's gone, no. He says, I bet it isn't. And the fella said, I bet it is. And they had exchanged a large sum of money. And do you
have a figure, or
it was into thousands.
Wow.
And back in the day, then that was a lot of money. And Davy at the end of the day gave me 500 quid. He says, there you go. He says, that's your win bonus for it. So if you go back to the early 1980s, I suppose that's like giving somebody 10 grand now.
Wow.
Where he had just done a deal with somebody at the side of the circuit. And it transpires that the elderly gentleman that he did that with was Johnny Ray's grandfather. Now, Jonathan Ray, who is now 5 times world superbike champion.
I recognise the name, yeah.
It was Jonathan Ray's grandfather that had to pay out to Davy Christie.
Wow.
So I thought, but yeah, that couple of seasons was real tough. And then, yeah, I think my brother eventually died 2 years after the accident, and my family didn't want anything to do with racing, and the support that was there then wasn't, and I was almost going against everything. But they didn't say don't do it, but they certainly didn't make things easy for me to race. So I did it on my own, but I was very, very fortunate because I had some very good friends round about me who I'm still very, very good friends with to this day. Ian Wilson, went to school with him. His son is now World Downhill Mountain Bike Championship. Reese Wilson.
I know the name. I'm trying to think if he's the one from around here.
Yeah, he does lots of training and stuff up around Innerleith and Peebles and whatever. So he's originally from Gordon. As I said, went to school with Ian. And as I said, again, there's a big long story about things that we could never ever write or mention that we did when we were younger.
I'm gonna have to get you all together for a reunion on one of these, and I just won't hit record, and then we'll just chat.
Yeah, I know.
I'll just sit here and listen.
Yeah, there'll be a few stories come out there. Yeah, Jimmy Shanks, who's still racing to this day. Now, Jimmy's in his 60s and still going quite well, but set himself up in business at Blink Bonnie Quarry. Jimmy helps quite a few of the young racers and things now coming through. Just a little bit of sponsorship on the quiet here and there. Helped Steve Kershaw with the sidecar. Steve Kershaw is now competing for World Championship status, multiple British champion winner. Wow. And as I said, Jimmy's helped him. And as I said, but we were all friends when we were younger, and we're still very good friends to this day. And I suppose sometimes we don't see one another or the group of us for several months at a time. But if we go back at Christmas or the middle of the summer or whatever it is, as you said, we meet up, and it doesn't take very long to just carry on where we were left off. So the witty banter, good light-hearted piss taking and everything else, it doesn't take long to all spring back into life. Where Will, as we call him, Ian and things came to East Fortune. I did a race there, I think 2017, just coming back on a CB 500, and as I said, he came there to help me, and it just was so easy because I didn't have to tell him what to do. He just naturally did it. He kind of knew what I was after and all the rest of it. So it was, I was very, very lucky with the group of people that I had round about me at that time, because it really was a very, very difficult time.
No, quite rightly. And then, I mean, the way you speak about your brother and the way you've spoken about him for the past hour is more than a testament to the man he was. So I'm only jealous I didn't get to meet him, and then I could have both of you in the chat. But you've spoken highly enough about him. Yeah, it was just there was lots of things, as I said, where again this opens up another big can to do with both my sister and my brother were very high academic achievers. And my brother served his apprenticeship as a precision engineer for Robertson's Bakery Engineering in Gala. He won the Scottish Engineering Apprenticeship of the Year award
I think, in about, again, 1981, 1982, something like that. And his engineering skills, unbelievable. As I said, were my sister and my brother, they were very good on that. School, again, it's another story. I'm dyslexic. I changed schools at the age of 14. Went to Galashiels Academy because they were much better placed to be able to deal with somebody like me, and had the support with the teachers and everything that was there. But yeah, I changed schools at 14-year-old, and I could barely write and read my own name. But managed to come out of Galashiels Academy with some O-levels hires and get some other qualifications and everything, then all done with the aid of a scribe. But the teachers and things at Earlston School that I'd gone to at the time, they were living in the past. Their comments to my mother was, Mrs. Taylor, all your children can't be high achievers. And Susan Hampshire at the time was doing this massive campaigning for dyslexia, raising the awareness of it. My mum was retraining as a health visitor. She was the local district nurse, midwife, and various other things, and had gone to Aberdeen University and was retraining as a midwife. Sat in a lecture somewhere and had heard all about Susan Hampshire and her work about dyslexia. And she says it was like a slap in the face. She says she had never... She said the dawning of realization as to what was wrong with me and why I hadn't picked up on various other bits and pieces. Again, it's another story. I remember sitting in a class of primary 7, and we had a quiz at Christmas, and I was always putting my hand up, a general knowledge quiz, and absolutely just nailed all of these general knowledge questions. And the teacher says to me at the end of it, "Do you know, Roderick," she says, "if you would put as much effort into your classwork as you do stuff like that, you would really do quite well." Why did the penny not drop?
Yeah.
As he said, and change school, and they were geared up to deal with it. But as I said, nowadays with autocorrect and all of the powers that's there in Microsoft Word, it makes life so much easy. As he said, I can sit and dictate things, although Siri, I think, has still got an issue with a Borders accent. He's not quite sure about that. He still comes up with strange words for things, but the tools are now all available to make life much easier for me.
I know. Oh, trust me, my spelling and grammar is atrocious, and Microsoft Word and Grammarly and all the things, they saved me many an embarrassing message that I sent out.
Quite recently, I sat there, I typed something out, and it either had a blue squiggly line under it, a green line, or a red line, or something else under it. And I'm thinking, oh, dear God, I can't be that bad, am I? And then I realised it was on an American setting. And I thought, oh, yeah, it's not so bad after all. Once I'd actually got the thing set up properly, it wasn't quite as bad.
I know everything that ends in I's, they try to change to put a Z in it. And you think,
oh, well, that's right, yes. Yeah.
Right. So we've spoken about 1982, the year that we don't want to speak about when we can help. But then after it, you had a 28-year break from motor racing, or a short while after you had a 28-year break from motor racing.
Yeah. What did I do? I think towards the end of it, I had about £100,000 sponsorship deal set up. I had 2 factory Yamahas delivered to me. I had a mechanic. I had a van. I was going to go race Grand Prix. I was going to do all sorts. And it just, for want of a better word, the whole thing just went tits up.
Right.
The sponsorship was withdrawn because the commercial rates in London on lots of properties was put up. So the company withdrew the sponsorship. I didn't have the money to run the bikes properly. And I was of the mindset that if I couldn't do it properly, I wasn't going to do it at all. So I walked away from it, and did a few random things. As I said, went on very long extended holidays, did a bit of climbing, a bit of canoeing, went up the Amazon in a canoe, went across the Andes, did the Machu Picchu thing, spent a while a summer working on a dive boat, helping people out. And then I thought, I needed to get a proper job, and ended up in London. I'd been in London a lot because I got fed up travelling up and down to the racing. So ended up working for Mercedes. Had, again, cut a very long story short, ended up as general manager of all things after sales on the Mercedes bus and coach side of the operation. looked after all of the bendy buses that came into London. Lots of people have been, oh dear God, he didn't have anything to do with the bloody bendy buses, did he?
Are you the man they can complain to?
That's right, yeah. So, as I said, where Boris Johnson was involved and Ken Livingstone, and then they were all fighting about the bendy buses should never have been in London, and they were spontaneously combusting and bursting into flames, and there was all sorts of things. But what an experience in life, as I said, from a mechanic that worked at King's in Earlston to end up in the mighty Daimler looking after one of their key operations. Yeah, as I said, for somebody that struggled to read and write at 14 years old and all the things I'd gone through, I had thought, yeah, it's not too bad. And then you say you get married, you have kids, as I said, son got involved in go-kart racing, and then you get divorced and you move and things all change, and then you get remarried again, and as he said, life just takes over. And I think I was kind of, I was doing lots of different things. I was doing a bit of cross-country running, and started to pick up different events and do different stuff. And I was then diagnosed with throat cancer, and just came out with the blue. So, as I said, a bit of surgery, bit of radiotherapy, lost a bit of weight, and in the process of this, going back to very, very good friends. So Jimmy Shanks, my wife Susie, Robin Lamb, Leon Larego are all instrumental in putting me back on a bike. And I was, for want of a better word, I was in a shit state. I was struggling with life, struggling to eat, struggling to swallow. You would, after listening to this for the last hour and a bit, you'd hardly believe this, but I was struggling to talk. And it was going to the toilet on my hands and knees. I really was. It was not a pleasant place to be. And people say cancer, it's a battle, it's a fight, it's a horrible disease. It is all of these things. And I think where everybody's journey through it is different. How people are affected by it, by the radiotherapy, is different. I think where I had gone in for the radiotherapy treatment, and my wife and I would go there, and I had 35 fractions of radiotherapy. I would have 5 days of it, have the weekend off, go back in another 5 days for it. And we started doing jigsaws and things when we were there. But the attrition rate when you were going in there, you think, oh, well, where's all Dave gone today? So he didn't make it, sort of thing. And you were looking round about. And although it's a bit like the bike racing thing, where people die, it's real, it happens. And it was happening round about me to people that I was seeing on a regular basis that was just disappearing. So the mindset and again, just the willpower. You need quite a bit of it for sure. As you said, I think I've got a great respect now for people that are anorexic, because it's an illness, it's a disease. And what I went through was, with all the treatment they were giving me, I was struggling to eat because of the mess my throat was in anyway. I was struggling to drink. So I didn't want to eat because I felt sick. I didn't want to eat because it was uncomfortable. And then if I did eat, I was then feeling sick again. So it was a vicious circle, but I was needing to put on weight, and I was needing to get protein, energy, all sorts of things in. And I was just struggling with it. So, but as I said, fortunately, as I said, with Susie looking after me, and as I said, I don't get away with very much, and force feeding me and all the rest of it. I was admitted into hospital where I just couldn't get anything in. So as I said, the last week of the radiotherapy, it was wheeled from the ward down to have the radiotherapy, then back onto the ward, onto a drip, and I was hell bent on them not putting a tube in to feed me. Right. And that was going back to, I watched my brother be tube fed for 2 years. And to me, that was just the beginning of the end. And I had thought, I'm not going to let that happen. So again, another bit of a very useful tool that I used was him and not wanting that to happen to me. So force myself to eat and stuff and things. But I was very selfish in some ways because I was in hospital and it wasn't a nice environment that I was in. It wasn't good. And as he said, you had to have your wits about you. And Susie would come in to see me, and then because I then felt I could relax, I would then go to sleep. So I would sleep while she was there, and then when she was not there, as I said, I'm waiting on them to come and bring me my meds. So I would be doped off my nut enough to be able to eat and swallow and get food down. But if you didn't time it correctly, you couldn't get your meds in at the right time to be able to get the desired effect for you then to be able to eat. And I had a lot of people to look after. So, as I said, to try and orchestrate that so everything happened at the right time was really difficult. But managed to get over it. As I said, got over that, got home. And as I said, with a lot of TLC and patience and all the rest of it, she managed to sort of get me up and about. So I was able to walk, and then from walk, go for long walks and get more food in and get a bit of energy. And during that period of time, this is where Jimmy, Robin and Leon had all colluded, and Leon had sort of invited me up to come and look at his bikes and sort of reminisce over racing stuff and bits and pieces like that, because he helped me out massively with some of the go-kart and stuff that I did, although Leon has very much got a racing bike background. So we had a common interest in it all. And he says, Roddy, so I've got an old TZ350G. He says, I'll tell you what. He says, you sort yourself out, and he says, you can race my bike. I kind of screwed my face up at it and went, no, I've been there, done that, Leon. I'm not that bothered about it. I'm not raced for God knows how long. Come on, you want to. He says, it's an itch that you can't scratch. He says, once the needle's back in the arm, he says, there is no going back. Mm-hmm. So I thought about it. And as I said, I spoke to Robin Lamb, and as I said, between Susie and everybody else, I said, have a go at it. And I said, well, you know what? I says, I'll have a go at it, but I'm not going to turn up half-cocked. Yeah. So Mark Waldron, that runs a company called Small Boy Track Bikes, it basically takes a bike to a track and hires it out for people to run around on. Mm-hmm. So Leon and I hired a couple of bikes off him, went to Donington, run around for a day, and Mark he knew nothing about my history or anything else. I was just another member of the public that turned up for a go on a track bike. And he said, by the end, he watched one lap and just wandered back into the garage. He says, no point in watching anymore. He says he obviously knows what he's doing, and just let me run round then for the rest of the day. So I did, I think, half a dozen track days with 600cc modern bikes, which I found fantastic. I couldn't believe how forgiving and how easy they were to ride. And between all of this, Leon had been very busy putting together a 350 Yamaha for me. So I took the bike with Robin, Jimmy. Leon couldn't go. He wasn't well. But I took the bike up to Knockhill and did a round of the CRMC, the Classic Racing Bike Championship at Knockhill. Time qualifying, stuck the bike on P2 and won the first race after 28 years.
So 28 years.
28-year gap. I had one good race in me that weekend because I was absolutely destroyed. I finished second in the other two. I did. It was an effort. Believe me, it was an effort. I had one good race in me that I tried. I thought, yeah, I'll give it a go, and I gave it a go. So as I said, that was after 28 years. So, and as Leon had quite rightly said, once the needle was back in the arm, there's no going back. So I don't know if that's a train spotting line or where that one came from, but it was.
That is truly incredible. After 28, I know people that could race solidly every day for 28 years and never get a podium, never mind a win. So for you to do a handful of track days and just hop back on the bike as if you've never been away.
I think, again, now, if I've had a bad day, and I saw somebody quite recently pulling a face because they had finished a third place and they got a third place trophy and they hadn't won. And I did say to them, I said, there's another 60 odd people out there that's been trying all of their days to try and get that trophy, and they've not even got one. I said, you're pulling a face at because you've not finished third. You just want to have a word with yourself and just kind of enjoy it, make the most of it. And they kind of looked at me and said, they got it, they understood it.
Yeah. Wow, that is truly incredible. I can't get over that. This story you said, because you effectively went and lived a whole other life for 20 plus years, 25 plus years.
Very much so.
So when you got back on that race for the first day, and like you said, when that visor clicked, did the sudden 28 years just disappear and you were like, I'm back exactly where I was when I left off?
Yes.
Really?
It did. There's nothing much more to say to it than absolutely yes.
And now here's the question. Did you suddenly feel the cam automatum go, and did you just start to feel the smile just sort of come when you just stood straddling the bike going, I'm ready for this?
Yeah, it was. It was shut the visor, and as he said, it was a feeling that hadn't been there for a very, very long time. But it's just that moment where, as you said, the visor clicks shut, and you're back in your world, in your own little world. And it's a place where I've not found anything to replicate that or replace it with.
Wow. It might be weird for you to hear, considering the situation you got to, but I am weirdly envious of you getting to experience that feeling. I am weirdly envious.
I've sat on the start line at the TT, and I've looked very closely at people like McGuinness, Guy Martin, William and Robert Dunlop, and as I said, some of the front runners. And when they're all sitting on the grid on Glenclatchery Road, all ready to go, and the number of them that you see, all of the press and media, everything all sort of drifts into the background of it, and they're either sitting on their bike or they're sitting at the side of it, just ready to roll. And I can appreciate where they are. And as I said, where the adrenaline, nerves and everything must be at. But you can see it, it's almost a sense of release that when they get to that point and they're away from everything else, because nothing else matters. Nothing. And this is where the racer's world is a very selfish one. So some of these people, as he said, you've got commitments, you've got mortgages, you've got partners, you've got everything, as he said, kids and all sorts. But at that point, nothing else matters. Nothing.
No, I can completely agree. I got that buzz from racing go-karts, things like Raceland and places like that.
Yeah.
I get that. I got that buzz from that when I was like 13, so I can only imagine how you felt.
Yeah, no, it's an experience, definitely.
Right, Roddy, you've been very humble and you've spoken very highly of a lot of great motorbike riders and very talented racers, but you're also still a pretty, for want of a better word, phenomenal racer in your own right to this very year. And I want to talk about the NLR. For those that don't know, it's the No Limits Racing Championship. You are the current 2021 Super Twins champion. And as he said earlier, quite rightly, he came second in 8 races this year. What he's not told anybody yet is there's only 27 races in the season. 4 of them haven't even been run yet. And he's also got 4 wins and 2/3 to his name for this year. So, Roddy, you're pretty much on the podium for half the races, or over half the races before the season's even finished. And just remind everybody of your age again, just for...
Yeah, 58 years young. Apparently, I'm having my second midlife crisis. I'm in my 3rd childhood. And age is just a number.
Quite right.
I think we're fitness. I've worked hard on the fitness. There's all sorts of things that I do between running.
Did you say you've gone vegan? Yeah,
I did. Yeah. As I said, again, it's just helped. As I said, there's lots of more sort of veggie type of stuff that I can eat. I still don't produce a lot of saliva. Still very slow at eating. A few after effects of the cancer stuff, and need to be a bit choosier with what I eat. Reflux and various other things. And I said, meat taken to digest is not great and stuff. So some of the things it was the right thing to do. But fitness, do this British military fitness classes about 3 or 4 times a week. I'll go and run. Wife got me into, she had signed up to do a thing called the fan dance race, which is across the top of the Brecon Beacons. I think it's 16 miles. It's what do they do? It's the same route as the SAS use for their final selection process. This is proper hardcore. And as he said, there's some very hard men go and do this. Ex-special forces, ex-bloody army, ex-paras, ex-all sorts. And they rock up and they like to go and do this because this is what they put the SAS through as the final selection. So there's a cut-off time for it for 4 hours. Now, they've got to do it carrying a rifle and a backpack and bits and pieces. But as I said, I was just happy to do it under the 4 hours. So I managed to do it in 3 hours, 48 minutes. So at 50 odd years old, I still got in under that time. So this is where I'm going with this, the bike and the fitness stuff. I worked very, very hard on the fitness because I'm racing up against young kids. And as I said earlier on, it's an endurance event. I'm traveling to the circuit on a Thursday, getting set up on a Thursday night, practicing on a Friday, time qualifying, heats and whatever on a Saturday. And you've got to peak on a Sunday afternoon. And it's all peaks and troughs and adrenaline rushes, and as you said, you've got to produce results consistently over that period of time. So the fitness side we worked very hard on, and Susie was very good and came and chased me along at all of these events. And as I said, took part an awful lot of them herself. So it was good team effort. It is very much a team effort, and to get to that this year, I think again, very good people round about me. Nick Martin that helps me out. There's a lot of engineering stuff for me. His son's now racing in the CB 500 class, so I help him. His name's Ricky Martin. I don't think he can sing anyway. So, and he does take a lot of stick for actually every time. He's been up on the podium a few times at the CB 500s, and they're always playing shebangs or something like that to him. But as I said, he takes it in good part. But team effort, as I said, between Rob Collard that I work for. Fortunately, he understands the racing, and there are lots of things that he supports me with. Sometimes it's a bit of good advice. Sometimes it's a bit of good, light-hearted piss-taking, just because he understands the racing world. And I think there's a bit of, when you were asking about films and things, TV series films, there's a couple of films you've got to watch, whether it's Talladega Nights or whether it's Days of Thunder. And there's a few one-liners in that. And where it's like Tom Cruise is often saying, yeah, I'm going to drop the hammer. And that's it, he's just going to go. Or the other guy gets up in the morning and says, yeah, he says, I'm so good, he says, I'm just pissing excellence. But there's so many different bits and pieces in it all, as I said. And Rob Collard gets it. He's been around the motor racing game all his life. His father was world hot rod champion, raced up at Cowdenbeath, and but Robert, as I said, multiple touring car winner. Won last year. They made the move into the British GT scene and won first time out. Won the British GT Championship, and he's now driving for a Mercedes, but Lamborghinis, Ferraris. As I said, Robert's not short of a bob or two. No. He's been a very successful businessman, and the pair of him and I rocked up at Snetterton to go to do a test that he was doing at the beginning of the year. And we looked round the paddock, and Robert had turned up with his very nice Range Rover, and we're looking round the paddock, and we both looked at one another and said, dear God, you know what? This is just another league. And as I said, there are people flying in their helicopters. There's people turning up with, as you said, very latest Aston Martins and Ferraris and everything else. They're all parked up in the pits. And this is just the runabout cars. Yeah. So it is another world. But he gets the racing thing, and he gets the need for speed. That's another line from a film there. I meant it. Top Gun now.
I might just start rattling them off and see how many I can get references for.
Yeah. Rob's a bugger, because if he getting interviewed, he will try and drop in random words and things, just out of the blue, just that you don't expect.
Completely random tangent. We used to play that as waiters. We used to do that. You have to get random words and you'd give them.
Yeah. I've not done that yet, but unwittingly, because this is going back to the 1980s, I had gone out and there was me, Steve Hislop, the Dunlops, a few of us. We were all there and doing the Ulster Grand Prix. Mm-hmm. And I had been running top 3 in the 350 race of that, and then the clutch had exploded, and that was the end of that. So I never got to finish. So I was back at the paddock looking fairly pissed off, and local guy from Ulster Radio sticks a microphone under my nose and had gone, "Oh, you must be very disappointed with that." And I said, "Yes, I'm pretty pissed off." And he said, "We're live here on Ulster Radio," and he said, "So what are you going to do when you go back home?" And I had said, just go back home. And this is my help out in the local farm. And now, what kind of farm is it? And I still don't know what possessed me to this day. But I said, it's a penguin farm. And he said, "Oh, Jesus," he said, "I've never heard of one of them." I said, "Yes," I said, the breed penguins. And he said, "What kind of penguins are they?" I said, "They're racing penguins." I says, and there was a bit of hesitation. I says, before he said it, I says, "They sell them to the fishermen." I says, "And they take them out on the boats." I says, "Because the weather up in the north of Scotland," I said, "it's like the Irish Sea." I says, "They can't fly pigeons." I says, "So there's no homing pigeons." I says, "So they train the penguins to come back into the harbour." I says, "They've got a little clip on their wing. They drop them off the fishing boats and they time them how long it takes to come back." "Oh, no, Jesus, I've never heard of that." "Now, what kind of penguins are there?" I said, "Well," I said, "you got rockhopper penguins," I said, "and king penguins and emperor penguins." I says, "But I says, it's the emperor ones," I says, "they're quite slick in the water." I says, "They're quite fast." And it went on like this. But that I didn't know at the time, it had gone out live on Ulster Radio. And this guy, again, no pun intended, but he swallowed hook, line and sinker.
Oh.
so yeah, that was a good one.
Roddy, you're a mean man. You had someone going on like that.
I wouldn't do that to you, Sam. I wouldn't do that.
I love the thought of all of Ulster Googling or whatever they were doing in the 1980s, just searching through papers going, where's this penguin farm in the heart of Ulster?
That's right, yeah.
Do you know what you should do if you ever go back? You should open up a garage or something like that, and you have to name it the Penguin Farm or something.
That's right, yes.
Wow. Roddy, I can't believe it. Roddy, it's been 2 hours. I've taken up 2 hours of your time, and I feel really, really bad. And I feel like there's still so much more I could talk about.
I've still got some iron brew left here. I'm still okay.
Let's keep going. We can keep going if you want. So you were talking about. I want to talk about your future plans before you go. And like what does the future hold for you in terms of the world of motor racing still?
Good question. Well put. I've got a lot of time and effort into the Super Twins that I've got. Mm-hmm. It's an engineering class. You can't buy the bike off the shelf. Right. The rules are great. Suits me absolutely to a T. You're allowed to have either a 650 or 700cc bike. Other than that, you're not allowed to turbocharge it or supercharge it, and it's got to run on normal pump fuel. But other than that, it's game on. You can do whatever you want. So there's lots of people all trying to make them go fast, and I'm one of them. And if I can get my bike to go through the speed trap as fast as some of the established stars, it doesn't matter whether I win the race or not, I'm more than happy with that. So I will continue on the same path with the Super Twins for next year. I'll love going to race at places like Scarborough, because that to me is going back to the real grassroots of racing, where we all turn up there, have a couple of beers and a bag of chips on a Friday night, and then we'll go and race and on the Saturday and Sunday. But the people that turn up, they're die-hard fans, the ones that will go to the TT, the Ulster Grand Prix, the Northwest 200, and they're a different bunch of people to the ones that are standing at the BSB rounds or the Grand Prix. Different, but completely different bunch. Much more a lot of camaraderie. I had problems with bikes at Scarborough, weren't running right, and the people that I was competing with are throwing parts at me to try and make sure that I get out on the grid. And I'm more than likely going to have a good go at beating them. But they're throwing parts at me to make sure that I make it to the grid. Now, that's more like the thing that used to go back in the late 70s and early 80s. And that's the kind of mindset of them all. So, as I said, people like Guy Martin and the Dunlops, and I think Lee Johnson and Peter Hickman, they do quite a bit of road racing. But they're also two riders that's also doing very well on the short circuits. Not many do well on both. Where Michael Dunlop, he's a roads man. He will do some of the short circuits and does reasonably well at it, but he doesn't excel on the roads. He absolutely excels. His name's Dunlop. What else is he going to do?
No, a name like that, you better be good.
Yes, that's right.
At the very least, you need to be able to burn rubber.
So, in answer to your question, what am I going to do next year? I'm going to certainly do the Scarborough races. I'm not going to go back and do a full-on championship year round either on Thundersport or No Limits or anything. And I'm going to pick and choose events that I want to go and do. So whether it's the support races to the TT in Isle of Man, whether it's some races in Belgium, specific road races, or whether it's, as I said, Scarborough, I will just pick and choose what I want to do and just go and have a good day. Just go and have a good weekend. As I said, with a load of like-minded idiots that want to go and do the same thing.
That sounds like you're racing for you, and that sounds like a perfect way to sum it up and end it. I think you've nailed that. For the listeners at home, if you're on the audio, you won't have noticed what's happened. But for those of you that have come over to the YouTube channel, you'll have seen that Roddy's moved to a different location, and I've actually undressed my bed to make it for once. Because what happened when we were talking previously, I forgot to ask Roddy the big main question that everybody loves, which is his 3 cheesy pop songs. So I called him back, told him I was dying to hear his voice once again after he'd had another long race weekend, and I thought I'll just make him sit and talk to me for an hour. But Roddy's back. He's still good. He's still alive and kicking, no matter how badly he throws himself into corners at 100 miles an hour.
You just got to hang on in there. Yeah. I was at Cadwell Park at the weekend and followed one of my competitors down the main straight, and the next thing I knew, my visor's getting plastered in oil, and I thought, shit, I've got to follow this guy. So I had to make an instant decision. So I absolutely lunged him into the next corner, overtook him, almost run him off the circuit, whilst I was sort of frantically waving at him, gesticulating that there was something wrong. Unfortunately, Matt had his wits about him, and he knew that I wouldn't have done that without good reason, because the back of his bike was just pouring out oil. And the last thing I wanted to do was to be following him into the next 100-mile-an-hour corner where he's dripping oil all over the place. So he thought that I did it for his own well-being. I didn't want to disappoint him. It was for my own preservation. It was nothing to do with him. So I thought, no. But these things happen anyway. So
at least he was sensible. I know, at least he was sensible enough to go, Roddy knows a thing or two, so if he's telling me something wrong, there's probably something wrong.
It was, yeah, without a doubt. I think he was about 18 or 19. He was quite a young kid, and as he said, but fast, very fast. And as I said, I just decided I was going to follow him for a couple of laps to see what he was going to do. And as we spoke about earlier, we were saying about sometimes you've just got to finish first. First, you must finish. And I thought exactly. He was a bit keen, I thought, and I thought, oh, well, let's just follow him for a little while and see what he's going to do. But no, unfortunately, the mechanical gremlins got the better of him and started to throw bits at me out the back of his bike. So the chimp running around his head, and he had the gremlins running around his bike. He did, no, definitely. Yeah, you don't want the chimp out your head. You need to keep that under control.
Exactly. Right, Roddy, well, I'm not going to waste too much of your evening, not on record anyway. I enjoy the conversations we have off camera when we can say a few more juicier stories. But Roddy, the main question, and the question everybody loves to hear, you have to pick 3 cheesy pop songs, or just 3 any all-time favourite songs of yours to get a party started. What 3 songs are you picking?
I think when we spoke earlier, you were saying about what would I do if I was going out on a Friday night or something. Going out on a Friday night is a bit tricky nowadays, but often, getting in the right frame of mind to go somewhere. if Susie and I is going to go out somewhere, as he said, either on the drive there or we're getting ready or whatever, I think there's a bit of ska will go on with a bit of Bad Manners special brew, something like that, where it's you think, yeah, it's a bit uplifting and whatever. As I said, I think I suppose not being cheesy, it's a bit of our song to us, where we are both our own special brew to one another. So as I said, we have a bit of a laugh and a chuckle about it, and don't take things too seriously. So that kind of sums up. Gets you going a bit. So it's a good catchy little number, as they say.
That's lovely. That's made my heart go a wee bit there. That's lovely.
There you go. Look, Christ, you'll think there's something wrong with me. I'm getting a bit sentimental here or something.
You complimented her on writing a book, and now you said you actually like listening to music.
You know, the truth of the matter is, she'll probably think I've bought another motorbike or something.
I know, yeah. You've not told her that you've just spent the savings that you had for the holiday that COVID cancelled.
That's right. Yeah. What savings? They've already gone in engine parts. Yeah. I'll be having an eBay embargo again to stop me buying motorcycle parts until Christmas or something.
I know, you suddenly find the joint account only works on her car.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. It's not a rev limiter on it. It works differently. That's what she said. The credit limit on there, she says, it's not a target.
Yeah. Oh, I struggle with that. I completely sympathise with you. As soon as there's money there, that's potential toys in my mind.
No, it's motorcycle parts.
That's what I mean. Toys. I assume motorcycle parts to you are toys.
Yeah. They don't work without it. So,
exactly.
As I said, that's tomorrow's problem. If I need spare parts, I'll worry about what I do with that. So, which leads me on another song, which was Bob Marley's "Three Little Birds."
Yeah.
What's that all about? How comes that a bit uplifting? But it's just don't worry. As I said, be happy. Everything's going to be all right, and it is. And if you just listen to it, it'll just lift your spirits a little bit, and you think, yeah, everything will be all right. So it doesn't matter how much you think or how high the pile of shit is. It's not that bad. Life really isn't that bad. There are people out there in worse situations than what you're in, and make the best of it. So, yeah, Bob Marley. He always sounds like he's bashing the bottom of a saucepan every time he starts one of his hits. Or maybe that's just what's on the list of greatest hits to do with Bob Marley. But yeah, a bit of Reggie music never goes wrong either.
No, exactly. That's 2 out of 3 very successful songs so far.
It is, yeah. Third one, I pondered over this for quite some time, and I just thought, back to basics, picked the phone up, looked at the playlist for the most recent plays on stuff, and I had thought, it is a going out on a Friday night kind of tune. I can't be doing with clubs and rammed in with people spilling beer over the top of one another and all the rest of it. Love a bit of live music, and I think getting in the mood for that. Go see. I've seen quite a few tribute bands, but I've seen this lot live as well. So AC/DC's "Shook Me All Night Long."
Oh, brilliant song.
That will get you going. Saw them many moons ago in Edinburgh Playhouse that they played, as well as at Wembley.
Wow! And, were you in the seats and everything? Didn't get to stand. Well, I suppose you could stand up if you wanted, but in the typical theatre setup, they didn't take the chairs out for everybody.
They didn't. No. It was you were falling over the top of the chairs and bouncing over the top of one another. It was wild, and Edinburgh Playhouse it rocked that night. But AC/DC, can't remember. I think it was a Hell's Bells tour or something like this. But very, very good. And as I said, shook me all night long, and my ears reverberated for about the next 2 days like I had been riding a screaming two-stroke for a couple of hours. It was, when you come out of a nightclub at early hours in the morning and your ears are ringing.
Yes, I know exactly that.
Very much like that. So, yeah, I'm probably a bit deaf because of that. So, but yeah, just to get you going for a good Friday night out, but with AC/DC, that rocks.
Well, sir, those 3 songs, just like your whole episode, that's put you right at the top in my mind. Brilliant. I can't wait to add them to the playlist as well. I'm working on making a little playlist for the Spotify so the listeners can get a good indication of what all our guests are like. But
yeah.
Wow. Roddy, I must say this has been a proper pleasure. This is not going to be the last time me and you chat. I'm definitely going to be keeping in touch. I've never been to Scarborough racetrack, so I'm going to see you there for sure. That's going to be on the list.
You need to get it on the bucket list, Sam. You need to come on down.
Well, I'll the next one I'll be there. How about that for the deal? I'll go.
Absolutely.
I'll bring my old man. He's a massive petrol head. I'll bring.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. Another set of hands in the pits never goes wrong.
I'm clueless when it comes to mechanics, but I'm very monkey see, monkey do. So if you tell me, I'll be able to do it. If worst comes to worst, I can chat shit in the corner to keep everybody entertained.
So that's it. Yeah. That's half the game.
Right, Roddy, where can people keep up with you on social media?
I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and occasionally when I can kind of get my head around it, I might remember to do something on Twitter, but probably mostly on Facebook. I think is Susie's very good. She does the updates and bits and pieces for me. If you get a very badly spelt and terrible grammar one out there with a few real random off the cuff ones on it, yeah, that'll be me. I'll have dropped that one in there. Mm-hmm. But race reports on what I've been doing or whatever, yeah, no, Susie keeps me right on that. As I said, team effort, and takes care of all of the entries and all of the organisation and all the things that you just need to do to make it happen. So she'll
all the important stuff. You just throw it around the corners.
That's it. Yeah. I just turn up and have a good time. It's a professional racer.
Amazing. Well, all those links are going to be in the description, in the bottom. Everybody will be able to find it. Like I said, I'm going to be keeping up to date, Roddy. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much. For all the listeners at home, make sure you subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Leave a rating. 5-star ratings help more than anything on earth you can ever imagine. As always, any constructive criticism, I always want to hear it. I want to know how we can get better, how we can improve. I don't want some engineer in my head telling me to brake 100 yards later, but anything that will do. Roddy, thank you so much for your time, good sir. I'll let you get on with your evening. As everybody who's watched the podcast will notice, it's gone dark in both our rooms. We've been chatting for so long.
It has. All the best, Sam. Great to speak to you.
Roddy, always a pleasure. I'll be keeping in touch. We'll probably chat once I finish this anyway. So everybody else, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week with another episode. Cheerio. Bye.